Okay. So officially welcome to our inaugural event of the Women in Tech USA chapter Choose to Challenge series. I'm Melissa Carson. I co-lead this chapter with Regina Viadro, who will join us hopefully in a little bit. And so we're really excited today to kick off this series because we have two amazing women to tell their stories. And so one of the things that we've wanted to do this month, obviously, is Women's History Month. We've recently celebrated International Women's Day, and the theme for International Women's Day was Pound Choose to Challenge. And so we've asked a series of women to tell their story and share with them what they've been challenging. And we've decided that this is not just a series that we're going to host in March. We're going to host it on an ongoing basis. So you'll hear more about our upcoming speakers shortly. So to get started, we have two panelists today. The first one is Melanie Goldie, who's the COO and CFO of Tomorrow Life Sciences, which is a fertility tech company dedicated to revolutionizing IVF. Melanie has over 15 years of experience leading strategy, finance, and operations at high-growth, tech-enabled companies. She has experience in building and scaling companies, including multiple successful exits. And prior to Tomorrow, Melanie served in executive positions at Refinery 29, Everyday Health, and JP Morgan. We also have with us Savi Sharma, who's the former head of innovation research for apparel at Nike. With 20 plus years of experience in technology roles and functions, she is passionate about the empowerment of women in tech and has mentored and advised over 3,000 professionals during her career. And we're lucky enough to have Lori Rodriguez, who is the new Chief Digital Officer for the Global Women in Tech organization and author of the upcoming book, We Want You to Stay, The Hidden Lives of 20 Women in STEM, to moderate the conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to Lori in just a second, but please make sure the chat is open. So feel free to say hi and introduce yourself in the chat, or to type in questions and comments as we go along, and we will get to those towards the end. So with that, I will turn it over to Lori.
Great. Thank you, Melissa, for kicking us off, and welcome everyone. And a big thank you again to Savi and Melanie for joining this ongoing conversation about women in tech. Our first question today is your origin story, right? So give us the highlights of your background and experience. And Melanie, let's have you kick us off. So tell us who you are, what you do, a little more in depth, how you got to where you are today, and why you're so passionate about technology.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you, Lori, and the entire Women in Tech USA team for having us today. This is super fun for me, so thank you. I realized in preparing for this panel that Savi and I have a connection. Savi lives in Beaverton, Oregon, and I'm from Beaverton, Oregon. I currently live in Brooklyn, but I spent all of my childhood out there. And I think it's actually a huge part of my origin story, actually, because I grew up down the street from the Nike headquarters, which is where Savi is, but also in addition to that, not very many people know that there were a bunch of semiconductor companies also in the neighborhood. So Intel was a big one, Tektronix, there were a number of them. And I didn't realize it at the time, but this all seeped into my brain as a child. And my dad was also in tech. And I think he was really the one who I credit to building an interest in technology within me, and having this sort of natural affinity towards technology that later in my life I would discover would be a great passion. So of course you couldn't articulate that as a child, but as I got older, went out to school in Boston, and was thinking through what I wanted to do in my career, and I decided to go into banking, into finance. So I loved numbers and quantitative thinking, and had an opportunity to work at JP Morgan, and they gave me a list of all of the different industry teams, and they said, which team do you want to be in? And I looked and it said natural gas, financial services, technology, and I said, ooh, give me that one, please. And so I begged them to put me in that group, and they did, and that's kind of the start of my career. And I lived in San Francisco, focused on software and semiconductor companies. And again, I just started to feel like this was such an interesting world of, just how quickly technology innovates and can change and disrupt people's lives, and hopefully for the better. So throughout my career, I decided to actually take a leap and move away from banking and actually go to the company side to help build and scale companies. And I found Everyday Health, which was a client at the time. It's a digital health company, and was able to join at a very early stage. We were only about 50 people with a mission to bring, the content in health and wellness online into a platform where, caretakers and patients could really find the appropriate healthcare physicians. And that was as simple a mission as that. But again, leveraging technology to do so. And ended up staying there for about 9 years and helping to grow and scale that business, which was great fun. Again, leaning into the finance angle of running sort of finance and corp dev. We did a lot of M&A deals. I helped to take that company public. And then we eventually sold it, at which point I sort of discovered another turning point of, what do I do next? And again, I think what's always been really important to me is working for a company whose mission really resonates with me. So I went to Refinery 29, where the mission there was to, again, use technology and the power of the internet to really bring people together all around content that elevated underrepresented voices, in particular those of women. So that was, I think, a very personal passion for me. And then we ended up selling that company as well. So I had another turning point, and I said, hey, what do I really want to do next? And I thought about going back to a growth company, that growth environment, helping to build something, helping to scale a company. And then I thought about my passion around healthcare and how much I cared about that, but particularly in women's health. And how do we make a difference there? And I was very fortunate to meet the team at Tomorrow Life Sciences, which is where I am now. And, we really are trying to, again, use technology, data science, analytics, monitoring, all of the great stuff that, all of the great technological innovations to really bring safety and security to IVF clinics to help people have the, safe and reliable method of storing the precious cells that will eventually be used in IVF. So that's where I am today. It's a very near and dear mission to my heart. I'm a mom. I have a 4-year-old, and he is my greatest accomplishment. And so here we are, and I'm really happy to chat with all of you today.
That's amazing. It occurs to me that you're a woman in tech, and I heard a passion for numbers. I heard a passion for health, but I did not hear programming and coding. So I just want to point that out, that you can be a woman in tech and go into an industry and a passion, that excites you without having to know a single strip of coding potentially. So that's awesome to hear. So Savi, what's your origin story?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Lori, and all of the Women in Tech USA chapter team, and all of you for having us here. I'm super excited, and particularly after Melanie told me that she lived about she grew up half a mile from where I live. So when I think about my origin story, I dimensionalize it in a few different ways. So the first one is my mom played a huge role. She was a science teacher. She's still a teacher, even though she's retired. And growing up with a science teacher, I always had this passion for STEM areas. The other aspect was, my mom epitomized patience. And one of the things she said so often was that when you are in a situation or when you are thinking about a problem, you need to be grounded in your thinking, and you need to look at the problem from 360 degrees, basically from all angles. Now, 20 years later, I look back at 20 years of career, and I look back at the statement that I heard so many times growing up, and those two are probably one of the most important characteristics of when you are in a problem-solving situation. You need to be able to look at the problem from multiple angles. The other dimension of my story is how I navigated my career. So I graduated with my PhD with a dual platform. So my thesis was in biochemistry, and then I also had bioinformatics, where I was doing protein analysis and nucleocapsid analysis using programming techniques. So when I graduated, I had a dual platform, and Nike chose to hire me on my information analysis skills. So eventually at Nike, I wanted to get into research and development, but I embarked on the journey, and I grew with Nike. I delivered significant business value, through business transformations that involved process, systems, and technology implementations, complex, problems, innovative solutions to those complex problems. I worked in multiple business functions at Nike. So started with product creation, supply chain, and HR, finance, sustainability, retail, and eventually the last 5 years I spent in, innovation function, first as leading up the portfolio and then managing the innovation research for apparel for entire Nike. And it's been super fun all through. A variety of technologies, a variety of even startups. Nike being such a big company, I have also had the privilege in those big business units, you start, some of the startup solutions, like let's create a crowdsourcing platform for employees to, work together. Or let's create, a visual communication of consumer science. How do we digitally transform that to make it easy for product creators? So it's, the opportunity for big programs and also these startups. Now, one of the, when I look back and kind of, look at an abstract view of my career journey, what I see is, failing forward fast, learning from mistakes, making new mistakes, taking a pause sometimes to recalibrate. That's so important. But then keep moving, right? Keep moving with that energy, with that passion that you have. The other thing that is an important one that I call out is I love people. I love working with people, collaborating with people. And Nike probably recognized that. So within a year of joining Nike, in 2001, I was tapped into management. So most of my 20 years has been in management roles as I went through a variety of business functions and a variety of roles and a variety of business problems. And the management, the reason why it is so significant is, for me, the passion is how do I capitalize on all my strengths? So consequently, I also think about how do I capitalize on my team's strengths? How do I empower myself to bring my best self and give my best? So consequently, again, working with the teams to develop them so that they are empowered to give their best and also bring their best self. And as Melissa mentioned in introduction, I also was active in employee networks, and I coached and advised and mentored over 3,000 professionals.
Wow.
So a couple of principles that stick out that I want to share is, I always challenge status quo. Growing up, it's always like asking questions like, why not, right? And again, if there is a good reason, yes, but typically there wasn't, when it came to women and, the way you want to operate. So when I'm tapped on to take a very high visibility project, I immediately jump on it, even though there are butterflies in my stomach. It's not comfortable, but I'm okay. I want to get into that and I want to figure out. The other one I think about that comes to my mind is asking for help. I know sometimes, you hear that asking for help is a mark of weakness. I advocate that it is a mark of strength. Like I have gathered a support network for myself, and I am part of so many individuals' support network, and I feel very privileged for both. The last one that I want to call out is when you are working on a problem, solving a problem or a business case or a big program, give your best, but do it without this detrimental attachment. I call it attachment with detachment. Like you're passionate about it, but you're not so attached that if that particular quarter, your business case is not funded, like it's the end of the world. No, it's not. You'll get funded the next quarter. Then maybe the organization isn't ready. Maybe that's not the highest priority. And so what it does with this attachment with detachment, that's what I call it, is that it lets you take things in stride. It's a yes, take it in stride. It's a no now, it's not no forever. So take it in stride and keep going. So that's, that's my origin story. Here I am, left Nike after 20 years of fabulous journey. And I am just in the process of finalizing my next career venture. The last 60 days has been interviewing and exploring and meet some amazing people across many different companies. So I'm going to sign the contract as the business transformation and delivery executive of a company, soon to be announced, but that's where I am. So thank you for letting me share my story.
Congratulations. Now you hold us in suspense. One thing that struck me, and I'm reminded of the McKinsey and Lean In study that talks about the broken rung in that first promotion. You got that first promotion in that first year. What do you think, Savi? What was it about you that allowed Nike to see your potential and tap you immediately into management, where so many women get stuck right there and they get held back, and it's years before they're able to sort of make that next rung up the ladder? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I would say what happened, and I guess, maybe tease out what might Nike have seen. So as I joined, Nike was in the process of taking their supply chain technology and processes from a antiquated mainframe technology, if any of you recall any of those, to SAP, which is, the modern day ERP system. And so, I was hired into that. So as I went in, what I saw, there are a couple things. So, there were the teams that are still being assembled, and we are already implementing and, going live with those technologies in different geographic areas. And what I noticed are two things. One was that the individuals were working, but they were not working as a team. So I just kind of, stepped up and tried to pull things together a little bit, in terms of if 5 people are working on 5 different things, how do we have more of a connectedness so that we are not duplicating and we are capitalizing on each other's work? It was just an opportunity, and I just kind of stepped up. That was one thing. And the second one was that, when there was an extra thing, there was, in addition to the program work, there was a production support, and how do we create tools that make it easy for our business? So that's also another opportunity I saw, and I said, well, maybe we can have a system where they can self-serve themselves to a certain extent on what's going on. So again, this was more like, okay, let's create something. Let's gather a couple people and create something. So I said, okay, can I create it? And my manager said yes. So I talked to a couple of team members and created. So I think it's probably the combination of, seeing opportunity and grabbing it, and also stepping up. And again, I was feeling very uncomfortable doing both, but I said, you know what, I'm just going to do it and let's see what happens, So that's kind of how when looking back, that's what I see, it was an opportunity, it was uncomfortable, and I said, I'm going to do it. And I think that kind of those two essentially changed it. And I said, okay, you're becoming the team lead.
That's amazing. You just stepped into empty space, right? And you owned it, and you were, it sounded like a little bit hesitant, but you're like, I'm just going to do it. It's the right thing to do. And that changed the trajectory of your career right from the beginning. Melanie, I'm thinking, you were at JP Morgan, and you said Everyday Health was a client of yours. Did I hear that correctly? So what made you and them come to the decision that maybe this would be a good partnership? Can you walk us through that transition for you as well, maybe in a little more in depth?
Yeah, so I was part of the tech team at JP Morgan, and at the time it was super interesting actually, because we were seeing all these really interesting digital media companies pop up, and they were all startups across various industries. So think of like how TripAdvisor really changed how people were looking at content about vacations and holidays, and Bankrate and The Knot, and so Everyday Health was in that category of companies that were internet companies that were bringing information online, taking something analog and turning it into a digital format. And so our team was able to work on some private company financing for the company, and I got to know the management team, and I just thought they were really great. There was vision, there was excitement. It was, to use your quote, stepping into a space that really, didn't have a lot of other people. And so I think, very early on, I was like, oh, this could be really interesting. And I thought it was interesting even before I thought about working there. But the more I got to know the company and the team, I was like, oh, this could be really neat. And I too, you know, like Savi said, I think that when you take these leaps or risks or changes, you're going to feel a little discomfort, and you're going to say, well, you know, this is different and it's change, right? But I also really believe, you know, looking back, that if you're not uncomfortable when you make a switch, then maybe you're not stretching yourself enough, and maybe you're not, you know, growing in a way that you could. So I just took a risk, and it ended up being like a really great decision, one of the best decisions that I think in hindsight I could have made. But it was a little, it was, you know, difficult at the time to really see that clearly, but I think you just have to jump into it. And like Savi said, you see what happens.
That's amazing. And it's so interesting, the similarities in some of these risk taking as well, and seizing the opportunity that's in front of you. That's fantastic. Thank you. You know, our next question really is in honor of this year's International Women's Day theme, Choose to Challenge. So Savi, let's start with you this time. How do you see yourself choosing to challenge gender bias and inequality?
So the choose to challenge question that I want to discuss today is, I choose to challenge this perception that women in technology or women in STEM areas like mathematicians or scientists, or, you know, any of those STEM areas, that there's a perception that they are not good communicators. They cannot tell their stories. They cannot talk about their geeky, sciencey, techie accomplishments in a way that everybody understands. And that is the assumption I choose to challenge. Now, how did I get to doing that? So I declare for a few years now that female empowerment is my purpose in life. And the way I have been working on bringing it to life, that purpose to life, is focusing on women in technology. So as I mentioned during my story a few minutes ago, you know, outside of these variety of jobs I had at Nike, I was active in employee networks, and I was working specifically, my passion was, you know, how do we celebrate? How do we amplify the voices of women in technology and their accomplishments? And how do we recognize them? So back in, you know, started in 2000 at Nike, what, you know, you could imagine is that in mid 2000s, the employee networks and the women's networks are growing more organically. It was not as organized as it is right now. So there were a variety of employee networks and women's networks. And so I was taking active roles, sometimes in leadership positions, designing programming. And, you know, people came there to share their stories, to share their roles, to share their experiences. And then as we went into 2010s, we started designing programming based on some of the needs about, okay, you know, mentoring programs or career strategizing, or how do I find my next role? How do I explore and network? What I have noticed is that even into mid 2010s, the people that are naturally coming to these forums, to these events, are the ones that are feeling comfortable at least to speak up, or to be able to walk to a complete stranger and say, hi, I'm Savi Sharma, you know, how are you doing? Nice to meet you. So be able to walk up there. What these networks weren't covering are those stars that are right under the surface, right under that radar, you know, that those that may not have figured out how to tell a compelling story even for a couple of minutes, or that may not have figured out or mustered, you know, this little bit of a, you know, dealing with that discomfort of walking over to somebody completely strange, you know, or a stranger. So this is where, you know, that's where I thought, okay, we need a place where people that are really into, you know, these STEM areas and that are like geeky. Geeky is a positive connotation for me, by the way. It's the most positive word in the world. So those, you know, those to feel comfortable. So that is where I helped co-found this Women of STEM. And what, you know, when we co-founded Women of STEM, you know, we went to HR and we tried to find all of the women and friends, of course, to, you know, where they are either in STEM roles or STEM background or both. Then we did a survey. And true to this, I can tell you, I don't have a slide, but it said there are 3 things they wanted. I want a place to geek out. I want a place to belong. and I want a place where I get help to talk about my accomplishments. And so we said, that's great. So in addition to co-founding that Women of STEM, we designed a unique programming. And this is the fun part. I love this part. So we said, okay, how about we create our monthly gathering, and we called it Beer and Legos, and we changed it later to Get Your Drink of Choice and Legos. Believe it or not, that is the biggest hit. You know why? People walked in, they sat at a table. We had a conference room with a whole bunch of Legos of all sizes on the table. People came, sat down, and started tinkering with the Legos. And guess what? They open up. Oh, you like Legos? Yes. And then it starts, so what do you do? And there is a level of openness that comes when your hands are involved. And I was, and yes, we didn't know the psychology at that time when we started. Later, of course, you can read up and you can figure out that that's kind of natural psychological phenomena. But that is one of the biggest hits. And we had it for 4+ years now as one flavor of monthly gathering. The other one that opened up many of these women who were otherwise not so comfortable in regular networking is, helping with kids coding camps, or doing some kind of, an event, like a volunteer event that has something to do with the coding or technology or robotics, and where, you gather to help, but then there is naturally people started talking. How long they have been helping? Why are they passionate about it? And then slowly that goes into what do you do and where are you? And then they started making connections and developing their support. And the last one is, we held STEM Day. I didn't know anything about STEM Day until 2016. Then I Googled and I realized that November 8th is celebrated internationally, or at least domestically in US, as STEM Day. So we said, let's do something. So we designed a good program, and it was a big hit too. So we did that for 4 years continuously since starting the Women of STEM.
That's amazing. Wow. I mean, I love the beer and Legos like that. That is just so fantastic. And to your point, you didn't know at the time the psychological effects of Legos. I don't understand how you figured that out just intuitively, but what a brilliant idea. So a whole bunch of ideas that you could take to your employee networks and maybe build out some additional programs than just the kinds of things that are in place in your organizations already. I am curious, one of the things that is an underlying factor in why more than half the women who enter STEM fields leave, or technology leave, 53% to be exact, after 10 years, is all of the unpaid work that they have to do outside of the home, as well as inside of organizations like what you're describing. That's a lot of work. And it's not work that other non-disadvantaged communities have to do, right? They can just work on their work. And you took all this on the side, and I'm assuming it gave you lots in return, but were you paid for that work that you were doing within that organization?
No, this is purely volunteer work. And this is purely because of the passion that, okay, can we share? And it's more about that sharing and learning so that we can all raise, like, everything, like societally we can raise, as opposed to in pockets. And it took a while to, gather the momentum. But I think that is, it was not paid. And here is funny thing, I personally worked on with a, lot of senior leadership, because, when you do this work, you want to ensure that, like when you do a STEM day, when you organize a STEM day where you have a science fair, where you have tech talks, where these, women are coming to showcase their talent, what they have worked on, it's not just for the network attendees. You want a lot of senior leadership to come. It's not so much that it's a big deal for, me as a chair or the other leadership team members. For us, it is more, we want the senior leadership to actually recognize that these kind of avenues are important to develop our talent. These kind of avenues are important to actually amplify the voices. Mm-hmm. And so, even to this day, after, 13 years of having the networks at Nike, when you have your goal sheet, like yearly goal sheet for your job role, you cannot put your volunteer work in there yet, right? We have been, we asked for it. Like, why can't, the people that have been spending a good chunk of time on a weekly basis, I think it's an organizational maturity, but I never you ask, if they don't agree, that's okay. I keep moving. At some point you will come back and agree, but I will keep moving. I'm not going to stop just because you did not, allow me. And I'm not doing it out of my work day, or I'm not, missing work. I'm doing this in addition to work. So I'll let you slowly, like get to that understanding, but I will keep moving. That's kind of the attitude. And I had that attitude all along. And the good thing is the people that come in and throw themselves into this, they also develop an attitude, even if they don't start with it. So,
did you see the people who are volunteering? Did that accelerate their promotions in any way? Right? Obviously, it's the right thing to do with an organization, but the organization is getting a lot of value from the unpaid work that you're doing. What was the value as an individual to contribute to something within an organization? Did you get more exposure to senior leadership this way? Did it promote your career or the other women that use, or other people who were also giving of their time so freely? Was there a return on your investment, to put it in just kind of stark terms, for the time that you paid in this unpaid work?
Yeah, no, the return is in a tangible and intangible. There are a few tangibles and few intangibles, more intangibles. So the intangibles are really, as you are leading, or as you are in this, organizing, thinking about programming and events and doing all of that, you get so comfortable talking about yourself, which is one of the fundamental things that we have been trying to address. So those that are on the leadership team or that volunteer to these events, they are getting comfortable to interacting with people, to talk about themselves and to talk about what they have done. Because when you finish conducting a wonderful STEM day and you need to sit down with this intranet in the company to write a story, like, you're all talking about it. So there is that intangible that's coming. The other one is you get exposed to the senior leadership, because you're writing the email saying, could you please swing by at least for an hour? Sometimes they ask you to come and tell them what it is for half an hour. So you're getting FaceTime. So which means, again, it's not always me, all these, 10 members on our LT. So everybody has to figure out, how do I tell so that this senior leadership team member, this president of innovation, would actually attend.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Melanie, what is your choose to challenge question or area of focus?
So it's kind of similar, actually. My choose to challenge topic was about how do we increase the number of women in STEM. I did not start a women in STEM program like Savi did, but I feel like there's a lot of work that we can do to bring those numbers up. I think women only make up about 28% of the workforce in STEM. And Lori, your statistic about the staying is really quite shocking, actually. And I think that, I think if you are in STEM, I consider myself in the STEM field, in a STEM company, that we can do a little bit of our own part to help raise those numbers. And that's, helping to create an encouraging environment. I think, not only at the workplace, but I also think that this starts in families, in the homes, in schools. And, that's how we can really drive change, is to really create encouraging environments that support girls to develop confidence in their ability to pursue math and science and engineering and technology, and hopefully motivate them to really pursue careers in these fields. One of the things that we're actually doing at Tomorrow, which is hopefully just one thing that we can give back to the community, is we just launched a mentorship program for high school girls, and we're targeting New York City schools first. It's our first rollout, so we'll see how this goes, and hopefully, but the idea would be to hopefully expand that. And it's really just a 6-week program during the summer where people from Tomorrow's team will host a number of different sessions about certain topics. So we have scientific affairs here, where we've done real validation and thermal studies on our product. We have women on our product engineering and design team who can do a session. We certainly have a lot of software developers here. We also have embryologists and cryobiologists and cryotechnicians. And then there's other folks like the finance and marketing teams who, have leaned into where they're able to contribute, but still in the STEM field. So we've programmed out a series of different topics, and we're inviting high school students to participate. And then at the end, there's an opportunity to actually intern with us. So, you know, again, it's just a small thing, but we really are very passionate about it here at Tomorrow. We're excited, and it's some way that we can kind of give back to hopefully start to at least move those numbers in the right direction.
That's amazing. I love the very hands-on and experiential program you've put together. That's incredibly powerful. And the fact that you follow up with an internship. One of the things as I'm talking to women of all ages and girls as well is the whether it's coming out of university and then trying to get the experience to get into a STEM field, or whether it's a re-entry or entry in the first time when you're older person.
Right.
I hear a lot of women are struggling, even though there's this, you know, vast opportunities and open positions in technology and STEM fields. And you have women who want to enter and they're taking boot camps in analytics and going back for MBAs or doctorates even. And then people are looking at them and saying, well, you don't have experience. And they're like, what else can I do? I've got all this background, whether, you know, this college that I went to or years experience as a manager in X. And I went to train myself in technology, but you won't hire me because I don't have a line item on my resume. So the internship piece is just so critical. And I would challenge anyone listening to this call now or in the replay to consider that in your organization, how you can bring in internships, apprenticeships, and give people an opportunity, whether that is people coming out of universities, boot camps, or whether that's things like the Mom Project, where you're having people who've left the field for some reason and they're trying to re-entry, but they've maybe been out of the field for a while. And as you said earlier, technology moves very, very fast. They're feeling a little lack of confidence and it's showing up in their conversations and interviews they're having. Tell me a little bit more about your intern program within that context.
Yeah, I mean, we have, interestingly, I'll share this because I think it's quite cool and unique. My entire finance team is women. I did not purposely plan it that way, but you know, turns out that we are, and we're really proud of it actually. And one of the women on the team has been wanting to do something for about a year now, and you know, she presented this data to me. You know, the 28% of the workforce is women, and that girls and women are systematically tracked away from science and math throughout their education. And that, you know, another stat of how men vastly outnumber the women majoring in STEM fields in college. And she just had, you know, bullet after bullet and papers. And so I said, you know what, let's just do it then. Let's just do this. Let's do it. And so, you know, she extracurricular activity, Savi, right? She did this on her own time. She thought of the concept. She thought of the different sessions. We talked with other people here, and we made some connections with other women who were interested in helping us. There's somebody that we know from the DOE who's, you know, very excited about kind of helping us get this out there and working with her schools. And so, you know, it's really just a simple premise that we just want to help empower the next generation of female leaders in the space. And so we made it happen, and we're very excited about it. But I think, you know, what are those other organizations? What are the, you know, could we be more targeted in sort of the schools, the communities that we go out to? These are some of the future thoughts as we continue to expand the program.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Savi, when you think back to Nike, were there internship programs? The mentorship thing is incredible, and the programs you've put together, and the STEM day and all of that was amazing. Were there internships and apprenticeships from sort of outside your organization or even with inside your organization to give people those needed stretch opportunities that they might not be getting within their existing job?
So Nike only has had traditional internship opportunities where you get summer interns, which is, you know, the university recruits and stuff. When it came to, you know, we called something we put together, I pitched a proposal. It hasn't come to life yet. We called it returnship to work. So, you know, women leave either for familiar responsibilities or to care for somebody in the family. Often it's women who leave workspace or to support their family, but they want to come back. So we called it returnship, and the proposal was essentially what Melanie was talking about is, you know, can we partner with an external organization, create some kind of boot camp first, followed by internship opportunities within the company? And, you know, can we do it for 5 to 10 women every year? And, you know, because we know as an organization, from that higher level that we understand that we need a lot of Python skills. We need a lot of, this kind of mathematical analysis and statistical analysis skills, because you can see the business strategy and you can guess some of those. So why don't we create those as internship opportunities for women to return back to workspace? It is, I think COVID was the last year, it has not moved at all. So I'm hoping that actually it would come to life in 2021 this year, but that's where Nike is.
Okay, awesome. What kind of advice, and sticking with you, Savi, on this, but then I'll ask you, Melanie, as well. And you can pick the re-entry or moving from a field that may not seem like a tech field, although every industry now is, and maybe later in life, and you're hearing all these wonderful things that we can do, and we need more women to tech, not just the pipeline from school, although that's wonderful, but if you're mid-career, make that change. What advice would you give to either a young woman who's either considering STEM field or maybe, is in it, but it's too hard, especially engineering? I hear biochem. I'm so impressed. I think that's one of those, what is it? Computer science, biochem, and engineering are like the ones everybody drops out of. How do you help people to stay and continue down this path if they're considering leaving, or to come in if they've left or are considering STEM, but they're not quite sure if it's right for them? So Savi, what would your advice be?
Yeah, so there are two parts, right? So one is, technology, young girls or even early college or, just fresh graduates, when they are talking about technology and saying that, I don't know about it, I don't know if I'm cut out for that. I say, how would you know if you're not cut out, or if you're cut out unless you go and tinker? So the reason why I like technology also is you can go tinker. I mean, everything is free now on internet. You name a technology, you can get it for 14 days, right? So go tinker, and that kind of get your hands dirty, and you can find out why it is working or how can you make it better, and suddenly just let your creativity flow. So that when people talk about, I don't know if I'm cut out, I'm like, you don't know unless you get in there. So that's one of the things, and that's what I do. Like even now, if I want to, I just kind of download something and start tinkering around, like just go and learn it. The second aspect, which is people wanting to leave or deciding to leave, what I have noticed, at least through the various conversations I've had over the decades, is that many times it is not their inner self talking. It is more the externalities, the extrinsic factors, some experience they have had, somebody may have said something they worked on did not see the limelight of things. So, again, a variety of reasons. So typically when people say that, I don't know if I'm really going to stay with this tech, one of the first things is, talk to your inner self. Just kind of, take a little bit of a pause. And is that what your inside is saying to you? Like, you're not capable, you don't have the skill set. Is that what you're hearing from your inside? Because there's an inner voice. You know about yourself. Sometimes it gets so cluttered with the information that you can't see, you don't have time to hear the inner voice. And if it is, well, that's a different story. But most often than not, you realize that, oh, this is because of these variety of bad experiences. So typically my advice would be to myself and to others is, don't leave on anybody's account. Don't leave what you love, what you have been passionate about, what you built, particularly, Lori, if you're talking about like the mid-career or, after 10 years or 20 years into, don't leave on somebody's account, because you have put in so much. You have this wonderful foundation you built, your relationships and your pride, and, you're a role model. So really grapple with that situation to kind of tease out what you really want, what's your inside is saying versus what are those. And once you figure out it's the externalities, then it's more about, how do I change this? Like, do I change companies? Do I change because you can change your context, right? So how do I go about doing that? And that's where, I go back to the support network, asking for help, use people as sounding board, and then follow up with them after they help you and you figured out. Go back and follow up with them, and then pay it forward for somebody else. So that's kind of, don't leave on anybody's account. Just, do what it is that you have built a lot. So continue to build on it, and then leave on your account if you really want to.
That is beautiful, very powerful words. And, you know, one of the things that helped me get into this new role as Chief Digital Officer here at Women in Tech, which I'm just so excited about, was what you said, leaning into my network. And one of the women in my book spoke about a board of advisors. Go find people, just like as if you were founding a company, you know, go find people that you have a connection with across a variety of skill sets. So when you have a need, you can reach out to them, and they know that. And it is this give and take, but it's also a taking, and then the paying forward, and you do that for somebody else. So you're somebody else's board of advisors, you create a board of advisors, and they walk you through some of this really, really tough things. So thank you for that. It's really sound advice. And I love the piece about not letting somebody else and some other externalities move you from what you've earned and what you love and what you're passionate about. And taking that pause to understand, have you really changed, or has something else changed your view of what your passion in tech or any of the STEM fields were? Fantastic advice. Thank you. Melanie, what's your advice across any of that life cycle we just spoke about?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wrote down all of Savi's advice because I'm going to take some of that advice myself. So thank you for that. Look, you know, I think I have three things to say. You know, I would say don't let your, if you don't feel that you know something, or if you feel you don't know a thing about XYZ topic, don't let that stop you. Women are extremely determined, and we are extremely capable. And so, you know, you will figure it out. So have the confidence that you will figure it out, and people will help you figure it out, right? So that's just sort of one thing that kind of is in addition to what Savi said about that community and that support network. You'll get there. Number two, I think that women have an incredible opportunity to make a real impact, real impact. And here's an interesting thought here. Even though women are half the population, we live in a world where it's taken for granted that the male perspective should be centered. So if you think about our everyday lives, even something as simple as opening the door in your office building is a struggle for women, because those doors were designed for the tensile strength of a man. When airbags first came out, many women and children were injured in the tests there. When the bags deployed, because all of the test around that product design was on 200-pound men. So the perspective of women is missing in design of products and services that are still to this day a part of our world. And in order for us to change that, women need to be in positions where they can affect that change by providing and contributing their perspective into the original design of whatever we're putting forth into the world. So I think that, you know, each individual woman that goes in and lends that perspective in a product design meeting. You know, I was in a meeting the other day with, we were talking about a screen, a user interface, and I said to the guy, "How tall are you?" And he says, "I'm 6'3". And I said, "Well, I'm 5'2". So if I was standing next to that screen, I would be, you know, stretching my neck up, looking up. It would be very hard for me to use this product. And maybe we should design in, you know, if it's got to be there for some reason, maybe we do an angled screen so I can tilt it down, so that, you know, so something as simple as that." And I don't come from an engineering background, but I think it changes the dynamic of the conversation in the room, where something that will, you know, that we will be using in our lives will have a real impact. So I do think it's just extraordinary what women can do in STEM. And then the last thing I would say is, at least for me, it's been really inspirational to see other women affecting change and in these leadership positions. And women need to see other women. And so one of the most inspiring things I saw just last week, and I think it was on the Women in Tech USA Instagram, was a picture of Diana Trujillo, who's the NASA flight director of the Mars Perseverance rover that successfully landed a few weeks ago now. And you know, how inspiring is it for a young girl to see that and to say, you know what, I can do this too, because I see myself in that. And I think it's just another way, something that's small, but something that, you know, stay in tech, because you can make a huge impact, but you can also really, really inspire and motivate that next generation of girls and women, or people who are in their careers who say, you know what, I can do this too. I see it and I want to do it, and make a switch. There are very few things in life that cannot be changed. So go for it.
Yeah, I love that. And you bring up a really very important point about staying, and, you know, not to lay the guilt trip on women, but maybe a little bit. It's my Italian background, I guess. The product design piece is so important. When you only have one perspective in the room, that's the perspective that gets designed for. And it's not nefarious, it's just of absence of being there. And I'll build on your airbag, right, story. In a car crash, all things being equal, women are 17% more likely to die. 17%, and 73% higher ability to be seriously injured in that same exact car crash. So there are downstream implications that are very, very serious. If we're not there, as you know, in health, then are we being represented in efficacy trials to the degree that we need to be? Are they taking in consideration, not just we have enough women, but women across the menstrual cycle as well as the whole life cycle? So women in menopause and perimenopause, you know, pubescent, what are the effects of those drugs interrelated to where the hormone levels are? We need to be there, and we need to rise, and we need to be present in every room where the decisions are being made. So it is very important. We're in product design, and the role model piece you brought up as well. It's very important for us to see women who are ahead of us. You know, when we see companies and there aren't people that look like us around, you wonder, do I have a role here? Am I investing properly of my time and my passion in this organization if it doesn't look like I can get very far here? So you're going to lose, as an organization, a lot of people who are very talented, 50% of them, in fact, or more, if your company all looks very similar. And then the third piece, what is in it for organizations? Nearly every study out there, when they look at diversity, and I'll just mention one of them, it's more profitable when you have more women and diversity in the boardroom, more on the leadership team. You just make more money. So it's a really good idea to keep the women in your organization. And you know, I'll just quote one, you know, female founders. So thank you for being a serial female founder, right? They receive half the funding of their male counterparts, and yet they generate more than twice the revenue. So it makes no sense to get half the funding, but generate, you know, twice the revenue in when you found a company. So I'll leave it with that. And Jennifer, are there any questions from the audience?
Sorry, we do have one question that just came in from Regina. So.
Great. What advice do you have for women that want to contribute in some way back to the community and feel they have something to offer, but have no idea how to get started?
I can take that one. So, you know, I think this is great. I love this question. I think there's a lot of ways to get involved and give back. I think you can mentor other women or mentor people who, you know, need that time. An initiative that I'm actually involved in is called 2 Million Mentor Minutes, started by a friend of mine. But you know, she gave me the stat that 2 million women were forced out of the workforce as a result of the pandemic. And that's really staggering. So this is about how do we get women in all fields, but just women back into the workforce. And part of that is mentorship. And so we're donating time, you know, to whoever wants it and whoever needs it. And so I think that's like a fairly simple way to do that. I think there's, you know, look to your community. There's a lot of programs with schools and organizations within your community that probably could use some help as well. So those are two kind of simple ideas that I think could actually make a huge impact. And if you just make a change in one person's life, I think that's success.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. One more question, I think, and then we'll wrap it up. Is and Savi, if you want to take this one, you had talked about the inner voice in your head and these externalities. What's your soul song? What is it that you say to yourself to try to talk yourself out of that negative inner voice? What's the positive side of that?
Yeah, there are a couple of versions of that. So one of them is things happen for a reason. Things fall in place when it is the right time. And so there is, let's look at the situation holistically and don't get, drowned by the noise. Look at the signal, like what is it that you're getting? So you try to get a role, it didn't quite work out, but something is coming back, it's telling you. So you only see the noise. So that's one of the things is that, take out the noise and look at the signal. So I bring it back to you're capable. So this may not be the right one and something else is on the way. So that's one soul song that I tell. The other one is particularly, when 16 years ago, when I had my child and I went back to workforce, back in 2004-5, it is not as advanced as now, at least the workplace behavior. It's like, oh, so you have a little kid, you really can't do this, you really cannot do that. So I had to remind myself of the priorities in terms of, okay, for this year, my priority is my child. And then, so the hyper prioritization was one version of my soul song. And I had to, as he was growing up, I had to kind of remind myself of the priority of the family and how with that clarity in mind, how would I approach work? How would I create that virtuous cycle between being very productive at work and then taking care of the little one and then going back and doing that. So I call that the productivity cycle song. I had that for a good 10 years, I would say 6-7 years. And then once the kid goes to elementary school, I think dynamics change a little bit. And, but I think that those are like the two different things, prioritization and then things that are happening for a reason. So look at what it is telling you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So thank you, Savi and Melanie, for such a really important discussion and some fantastic insights and for being just amazing role models and choosing to challenge every day. Melissa, back to you. Any final thoughts?
No, this was so awesome. I'm so glad that all of you were able to join today, that we had great speakers, and I encourage you to join us next month. We have two great panelists lined up for April 21st at the same time. Ann Duncan, who's the Chief Technology Officer for State and Local Government at Dell Technologies, and former Chief Information Officer at the US EPA. And then we also have Lori Nunez, who's the Vice President of Software Engineering, Machine Learning, and NLP for Global Wealth Management at JP Morgan Chase. So we have a great set of women coming. I encourage you, we'll put some links out there if you want to share this recording with people who may have missed it. And also we encourage you, if you're not already part of our Women in Tech community, Jennifer just put a link in the chat where you can register, get online with us, and definitely follow us on LinkedIn if you're not already. But thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Savi. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Lori, for facilitating us today. Have a great afternoon or morning if it's still West Coast for you.
Thank you, everyone. This was fun.
Thank you
so much for having us.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.